Evelyn Carter thought she was just taking a night train through Eastern Europe to clear her head. But when she woke up, the train was still moving, and everyone was gone. Every seat empty. Every door locked. Her phone. Dead. And in the eerie silence, only one thing echoed through the cars. A slow, rhythmic knock, coming from the luggage hold. What would you do if you woke up alone in a place where no one ever should be, and something was waiting for you in the dark? Evelyn Carter jolted awake with a shiver, the kind that tells you something's wrong before your eyes can adjust. Her cheek was pressed against the chilled glass of a window smeared with mist, streaked by the motion of the moving train. For a long second, she lay still, trying to remember where she was. A faint light poured in through the cracks of the cabin, the dim sunrise barely illuminating the world outside. The train was still moving. She could hear the rhythmic metal clatter beneath her. But something was off. Too quiet. No footsteps. No murmuring voices. No coughs, no announcements, no breakfast cart rattling down the aisle. Just silence. She sat up slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and looked around. Every seat in her carriage was empty. Completely empty. It wasn't just deserted. It looked paused, like everyone had simply stood up and vanished mid-ride. Her heart began to thud. She stood and moved cautiously down the aisle, calling out, "Hello." Her voice was swallowed by the void. She pushed open the sliding door to the next carriage. Same thing. Empty seats, coats left behind, one tray table down with a crossword puzzle unfinished. She stepped over an abandoned book on the floor, pages bent as if dropped suddenly. She kept moving. 3 more cars. Same silence. A baby stroller. A spilled thermos. A sandwich wrapper fluttering from a vent draft. No passengers. No staff. She opened the staff cabin, empty. The conductor's booth. Locked from the inside. Evelyn knocked. No answer. She grabbed the handle. Turned. Nothing. Her palms began to sweat. She reached for her phone. 1% battery. No signal. The moment the screen blinked out, she realized something that hadn't occurred to her before. No sound of phones. No texting. No music. No children giggling. The train was filled with absence. She banged on the conductor's door. No response. Then she noticed something else. No train stations. No signs. Just endless trees blurring past. Not a single stop. How long had she been asleep? She tried the emergency call button. No power. The intercom was dead. The only thing alive was the train itself, gliding steadily like a ghost across forgotten tracks. When she opened the door to the cargo car, a gust of cold air hit her face. In the distance, the sky above the forest had turned a deeper grey. Her hands trembled as she backed into the carriage, shutting the door again. Every instinct told her this wasn't just a delayed train or a weird prank. Something had gone horribly wrong. People don't just disappear. Not like this. And yet, they had. She walked down another car and froze. A coat hung on a seat, sleeves tied as if hugging the backrest. She approached, reached out to touch it, and felt that it was still warm. Recently worn. Her breath caught. She turned around, half expecting someone to be standing behind her. No one. She whispered again. "Hello." Her voice cracked. She was still alone. The silence felt heavier now. As if it had weight. A presence. Her ears rang in the stillness, her heart thudding in protest. She sank into a seat, staring at the tracks blurring behind the window. Alone. Moving. No answers. And then, faintly, something knocked from underneath. Metal on metal. A soft, deliberate tapping from the floorboards of the luggage hold. Evelyn's breath clouded the window as she stared into the blur of pine trees rushing by. The train pressed forward, unbothered, ignorant of the growing fear in her chest. Her mind struggled to keep up, to find logic in a situation that had none. She shut her eyes for a moment, trying to ground herself, but all it did was unlock memories she wasn't ready to face. The cold silence of the train echoed the emptiness she'd been carrying long before she boarded it. Just 2 weeks earlier, she had walked out of the apartment she'd shared with Daniel, the man she thought she would marry. She remembered the wine glass shattering on the floor when she confronted him, his silence louder than denial. A year of wedding plans, of promises whispered into the dark, erased in seconds when she found the messages. Not one affair. Several. All with women he met on work trips, business dinners, industry events. And he didn't even try to lie about it. That was the worst part. He just stared at her, then muttered, "I didn't think you'd find out this way." She quit her job 3 days later. Not because of him, but because she realized she had spent years living a life that didn't belong to her. The long shifts, the sleepless nights, the emotional weight of holding strangers' hands as they took their last breaths, it had all hollowed her out. There was nothing left. She wasn't Evelyn anymore. Just a shape moving through the world. The trip to Eastern Europe was supposed to be her restart. A way to feel something again. She picked the route from Budapest to Bucharest on a whim, drawn by the name, the romantic sound of it. A night train through the heart of a country she'd never been to. No schedule. No expectations. Just motion and silence. Now that silence was swallowing her whole. She walked back to her seat and rummaged through her backpack, hoping to find something to calm her. Gum, mints, anything. Her fingers brushed the edge of a postcard she'd bought at the station in Budapest. A photograph of an old Romanian church, its steeple crooked and looming against a foggy sky. She had meant to send it to her sister but never got around to writing it. Her sister had stopped calling anyway. That had been a slow break. Years of pretending things were fine between them, that their childhood hadn't left deep scars. Evelyn had always been the fixer, the one who held everything together when their mother disappeared for days, and their father drank to remember what it felt like to be loved. But now Evelyn was the one who needed help, and there was no one to call. No Daniel. No job. No family. Just this train. And the creeping feeling that it wasn't just a train. She found her passport and ticket still in her coat pocket. The details were correct, Budapest to Bucharest, overnight. But the train number didn't match the one she'd seen on the platform. Had she boarded the wrong train? She tried to remember, but it was all a blur now. The last thing she remembered before falling asleep was the soft hum of the train engine and the rhythmic clack of the tracks. No strange faces. No warnings. Just the low lull of motion and her own exhaustion pulling her under. She pulled her scarf tighter around her neck and made her way down the corridor again, opening another door to another empty car. This one had signs of life too, open luggage racks, a pair of reading glasses folded neatly on a seat, an e-reader still glowing with a paused sentence. Her skin prickled. She walked past the seat slowly, as if someone might still be there, invisible to the eye but watching. She stopped when she saw the crumpled napkin. There was handwriting on it. A message, hastily scribbled in smudged black ink. One word repeated 3 times. Don't forget. Don't forget. Don't forget. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. Who wrote this? And what weren't they supposed to forget? The edges were torn, as if it had been stuffed quickly into a pocket or thrown in haste. She checked the surrounding seats. Nothing. Just a coat on the floor and a suitcase half unzipped. The napkin felt like a warning, but from who? She sat for a moment, staring down at it, then looked out the window. Still no towns. No signs. Just that same stretch of trees, like a loop. Was she going in circles? She suddenly stood and turned toward the direction of the front of the train, determined to reach the conductor's booth again, this time to break it open if she had to. But as she passed a compartment door, she noticed something that stopped her cold. A child's stuffed rabbit. It was propped up neatly on the seat, its eyes shiny and one ear missing. There was no dust on it, no signs of age. It was recent. Fresh. Her heart sank. What happened to the child who held that toy? Where were they now? She sat down opposite the rabbit, unsure why, but feeling like it had to mean something. Her hands felt numb, her mind racing. Was this really happening? Was it possible to hallucinate something this real? She pressed her fingers to her pulse, steady. Her breath, normal. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't some emotional breakdown from heartbreak. This was real. The rabbit. The napkin. The train that wouldn't stop. The people who were gone. She was awake. And very, very alone. Until the knock came again, this time louder. Beneath her. From the floor. Evelyn stood frozen, staring at the floor where the sound had come from. The knock wasn't random. It was steady. Intentional. Like a message. Her first instinct was to back away, but her curiosity had grown sharper than her fear. She kneeled slowly, pressing her ear to the floor. Silence. Then 3 taps. A pause. Then 2 more. They didn't sound mechanical. They sounded human. She felt around the floorboards and noticed a small seam where the metal panel didn't quite sit flush with the rest of the floor. She hooked her fingers into the groove and pulled. It took effort, but the square of flooring lifted with a soft pop, revealing a narrow, dark crawlspace lined with wires, pipes, and scattered debris. She reached for her phone for light but remembered it was dead. The emergency flashlight in her backpack had to do. She turned it on and aimed it downward. The beam shook in her trembling hand. The space was tight, but something in the back shifted. A scraping sound. She pulled back, heart pounding. "Hello," she whispered, and immediately regretted it. No answer came. She lowered the flashlight again and caught a glimpse of movement, a flicker, too quick to identify. Something had been down there. She dropped the panel back into place and stood up fast, wiping her hands on her jeans. She couldn't stay still. She had to keep moving. She made her way down the corridor into another train car, and that's when she saw it. Carved into the wooden backs of the seats were strange symbols. At first glance they looked like scratches, accidental markings from bags or zippers. But as she passed more rows, she noticed patterns. Circles overlapping triangles, lines crossed through spirals, shapes that looked like eyes. Some symbols were faint, others dug deep into the wood. They weren't decorative. They were messages. She ran her fingers across them, feeling the deep grooves. Someone had made them with purpose. Some were burned into the wood, others drawn in what looked like charcoal or old grease. She looked down and saw more of the symbols scrawled along the lower metal of the walls, right by the floor. As if whoever had done it didn't care about hiding them. Or maybe they wanted them found. She spotted a rolled-up newspaper on one of the seats and opened it with shaky hands. It was dated 3 days earlier and was written in Romanian. She didn't understand the words, but one article had a large black and white photo of the train. Her train. But the name beneath it wasn't the one she remembered from the platform sign. The article headline featured the number 17 prominently, and the caption under the photo was followed by dates. All of them years ago. Not current. She folded the paper slowly and placed it back down, then turned to see the window beside her had fogged over. But only one window. The others remained clear. She stepped closer and realized it wasn't fog. There were fingerprints on the glass. Child-sized. Pressed close together, smeared slightly, as if whoever made them had been trying to look out frantically. Or trying to get in. She turned to go back toward the luggage car. She hadn't seen any luggage in it before, but maybe she missed something. As she walked, she passed more clues that people had been there, and left suddenly. A phone charging cable plugged into an outlet with no phone. A thermos still warm to the touch. A playing card stuck between 2 seats. But no people. No bodies. No blood. Just absence. She reached the back of the car, gripped the handle, and opened the door to the luggage hold. The temperature dropped immediately. The car was darker than the others, lit only by a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. Luggage was stacked in rows, some knocked over. One suitcase lay open with clothes spilling out. A single red shoe rested on top. She stepped forward and noticed something drawn on the luggage wall. More symbols. But these were newer. Freshly drawn. And this time, with something that looked like soot or ash. She aimed her flashlight and saw that a narrow corridor ran between the stacks of luggage. At the far end, a door. One she hadn't seen from the outside. She moved slowly, stepping over a fallen duffel bag and stopping when she heard a whisper. Not a sound from the train, not the wind, a whisper. Her name. Just once. Evelyn. Her legs went weak. She froze. The air felt thick, hard to breathe. She didn't dare call back. She just waited. Nothing followed. No movement. No sound. Just stillness. She looked again at the wall and noticed something that made her chest tighten. Among the strange symbols was a drawing. A figure, stick-like, crude, standing beside a train. Around it were others, kneeling. Above the figure was a circle with jagged edges like a sun. Below, lines that looked like teeth. She backed away from it, trying to make sense of what it meant. Ritual. Warning. She turned around and fled the car, slamming the door behind her. As she stood in the connecting vestibule catching her breath, she noticed a flash of light through the train window. A town. Buildings. Lights. She rushed to the window to wave or scream, but the lights were gone in seconds. Just trees again. She hadn't imagined it. A cluster of buildings had been there. But the train hadn't slowed. No whistle. No platform. It was like it had passed through something that didn't exist anymore. She gripped the window ledge, breathing hard. She felt watched. Every time she turned a corner, she expected someone to be there. But they weren't. It wasn't just loneliness now. It was something else. Like being observed. Like being studied. She made her way to a dining car and collapsed into one of the booths, needing a moment to think. That's when she noticed something tucked under the napkin dispenser. A notebook. Black, leather-bound, the kind you buy in gift shops. She opened it and was stunned to see it wasn't blank. It was filled with notes. Scribbles. Names. Drawings of the symbols she'd seen. Dates. Crossed-out entries. And a final message in jagged handwriting: don't trust what you hear after midnight. Don't look in car 17. The words in the notebook echoed in Evelyn's head as she sat stiffly in the dining car, notebook gripped tightly in her hands. Don't trust what you hear after midnight. Don't look in car 17. She glanced at her watch, but the screen was black. It had died hours ago, just like her phone. No way to know what time it was. But something in her gut said it was close. The rhythm of the train had changed. She could feel it. A heavier sound in the tracks. As if the rails had shifted beneath them. A longer pause between each impact. Like the train was climbing. Or descending. She stood and headed toward the back of the dining car. Beyond it, more empty compartments, the air colder with each step. The silence wasn't as still anymore. It carried a low hum, not mechanical, but living, like a breath held in the dark. She walked slowly, every footstep bouncing off the walls louder than they should have. She passed another door, paused, and pushed through it to find herself in what looked like an old sleeping car. Bunk beds, unmade. Pillows indented as if someone had just been there. She reached out and touched one. Still warm. She was about to turn around when she heard it. A soft sound. Thud. Then again. Thud. Not from beneath. From ahead. She stepped carefully down the narrow aisle, passing bunk after bunk, heart pounding. And then she saw the flicker of movement. A shadow pulling back behind a curtain. She rushed forward and flung it open. Nothing. Empty bed. But the curtain was still swaying. Someone had been there. Or something. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned to go, but something made her pause. A whisper, faint and raspy, from farther down the car. She moved toward it, trying to stay calm, even as her instincts screamed at her to run the other way. She reached the end of the sleeping car and saw a bathroom door shut tight. The whisper came again, clearer this time. A voice, old, tired, speaking half in English, half in Romanian. Don't open it, it doesn't like the light. She hesitated, unsure if she was hearing things. Then the voice again. Please, help. It's not gone yet. She moved closer. Who's in there? She called. A cough, then silence. Please, the voice said again. I locked it in. I locked it in car 17. Her blood ran cold. She reached for the handle and slowly turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a small bathroom lit by a dim yellow bulb. And there, slumped in the corner, was an old man in a torn brown coat. His eyes were wide, sunken, skin pale as wax. He looked up at her with a mix of relief and terror. You shouldn't be here, he rasped. It watches. From the windows. At first, I thought I was mad. But I'm the only one left. The rest, they jumped. Evelyn crouched beside him. Jumped, she repeated, trying to understand. Off the train. He nodded slowly, gripping her arm with surprising strength. The door's open, but only in the dark. Only when it's hungry. Some jump. Others are taken. She felt her stomach twist. What is it? She asked. The man's eyes flicked to the ceiling. It's not from here. It follows the old tracks. The forgotten ones. Places that don't exist anymore. It feeds on memory. On people who won't be missed. His voice cracked. That's why we were chosen. All of us. No one's looking. Evelyn shook her head. This can't be real. But he just stared at her. Don't go to car 17, he said. I sealed it. I heard the screaming. The ones who stayed too long. They disappeared. But not all at once. Some were half here, half gone. You could hear them walking. But you couldn't see them. Just the shadows. Evelyn stood, shaken. We have to stop the train, she said. We have to get off. The man laughed bitterly. There is no getting off. Not unless it wants you to. The only stop is the station with no name. The place between. She stepped back, heart hammering. Come with me, she urged. But he shook his head. I can't. It'll know. It's always listening. He reached into his coat and handed her something wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it, a small, rusted key with a tag that read 17. Why are you giving this to me? She asked. The man's eyes welled with tears. Because it likes the new ones. It hides from the old. You still have a chance. But don't open it unless you're ready. Once you see it, you'll never unsee it. She pocketed the key and backed out of the bathroom, shutting the door behind her. She turned and nearly screamed. The hallway was empty. No beds, no curtains, no trace of the sleeping car. Just walls of rusted metal and dust-covered windows. She turned back to the door. Gone. Just a blank wall. No sign the bathroom had ever been there. Her hands trembled as she touched the metal. Solid. Real. But the man was gone. She pulled out the notebook and flipped to the last page. There, in handwriting that hadn't been there before, were the words, Now you know. It's your turn. And in the quiet, the rhythmic knocking began again. But this time, not from below. It came from the end of the corridor. Behind a door labeled, Car 17. Evelyn stood staring at the narrow metal door marked Car 17, her breath catching with every second that passed. The number itself seemed darker than the rest of the train, not just painted on, but burned into the metal like the digits had been branded there long ago. The knocking had stopped. The silence was worse. It felt thick, heavy, as if the air around that door refused to move. Her fingers tightened around the rusted key in her pocket. She could hear the old man's voice in her head. Once you see it, you'll never unsee it. She should turn back. She knew that. But something deeper, something she couldn't explain, pulled her toward the door like a thread wrapped around her spine. Curiosity or fate, she couldn't tell the difference anymore. The train shuddered as it entered a tunnel, plunging everything into total darkness except for the emergency lights that flickered dim red above her. Her reflection in the window was a ghost, pale and trembling, caught between choices she didn't understand. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the key, and inserted it into the lock. The door creaked as it opened, releasing a wave of cold air that smelled like damp soil and something older, something sour and metallic. She stepped in slowly, the door sliding shut behind her with a final click. Inside, Car 17 was darker than the rest. There were no rows of seats, no signs of passengers. The floor was covered in dirt. Real dirt, like a forest floor. Roots curled out of cracks in the walls. The windows were fogged over, and shapes passed behind them, too fast to catch. The lights flickered once and died completely. Evelyn raised her flashlight, and what she saw nearly made her scream. On the walls were portraits. Hundreds of them. Faces painted in faded, smudged strokes. Some lifelike, others distorted. Men, women, children. Eyes staring. Every inch of the car was covered in these faces, and each of them seemed to follow her as she moved. The air pulsed like a heartbeat. She stepped forward and noticed a single bench at the center of the car, surrounded by a circle of white stones. On the bench sat a figure, its back to her, unmoving. It wore a conductor's uniform, the fabric tattered and moldy. Slowly, it turned its head toward her. The face was featureless, smooth like clay, except for a mouth carved into a silent scream. No eyes. No nose. Just that mouth, stretched open, forever frozen. She stumbled back, but the figure didn't move. Its head slowly turned back to face forward again, like she hadn't been worth acknowledging. She looked down at the notebook in her hand, almost instinctively. It had fallen open to a new page. Words were appearing on it, one by one. We are between. We are what is lost. We are memory unclaimed. Her skin prickled with terror. The lights above blinked back on, not red this time, but a strange green hue that made the faces on the walls glow faintly. Behind her, the door she had come through was gone, replaced by more walls. More faces. She ran toward where it had been, slamming her hands on the metal, screaming. No way out. A sound came from the floor. She turned. The dirt was shifting. Something was rising from beneath. Slowly, a hand emerged, bone-white, thin, with fingers too long to be human. Then another. A body pulled itself up, wearing the clothes of someone who had clearly once ridden this train. Its eyes were black voids. No irises. No light. Just emptiness. Evelyn froze. More hands broke through the ground. Dozens. Then the whispering started again. Stay with us. Stay with us. The voices didn't come from the creatures, they came from the walls, the faces painted there now shifting, blinking, mouthing silent words. Evelyn backed into the center of the car, clutching the notebook. It began vibrating in her hands, humming like a live wire. She opened it again and saw a message forming, "You're not supposed to be awake." The flashlight flickered and died. Total darkness swallowed her. She dropped to her knees, heart racing. Then she felt something wrap around her wrist. Cold. Slimy. Alive. She yanked her hand free and scrambled to her feet. The creatures didn't chase her. They stood still, watching, swaying gently. Then, through the impossible darkness, she saw a doorway appear, not a train door, but a stone archway glowing with blue light. It didn't belong. Not on a train. Not anywhere she understood. But it called to her. She stepped toward it, the walls of the train falling away like mist. Behind the archway, she saw something that stopped her heart, her childhood bedroom. Everything exactly as it had been. The old lamp. The posters. The stuffed bear she'd lost at age 6. She turned to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The blue light surrounded her. The notebook in her hand turned hot, burning her skin. She dropped it. It burst into flames without fire. Just light. And inside that light, she saw faces. Hers. Daniel's. Her sister's. The people on the train. All connected. All being pulled away. A voice echoed deep inside her mind. This train doesn't take you places. It takes pieces of you. The conductor figure turned its head again. Slowly. This time it pointed, not at her, but at the archway. The choice. She could step through and disappear, let go, be forgotten. Or she could stay, resist whatever this was. The walls began to tremble. The faces screamed in unison, and the blue light surged forward like a wave. At the last second, Evelyn reached into the dirt and grabbed the rusted key. She held it up like a weapon, and the light cracked, splitting open the illusion. The bedroom vanished. The walls returned. The archway closed with a sound like thunder. And car 17 fell still. She collapsed, covered in dirt, the key clenched tight in her fist. The faces on the wall no longer moved. The conductor figure had crumbled into dust. The exit door reappeared. She stumbled toward it, shoved it open, and fell through. The lights outside were back to red. The train still rattled forward. But something had changed. Evelyn stood slowly and turned to look back. The door to car 17 had vanished. Again. Evelyn stumbled back into the corridor, the door to car 17 gone behind her as if it had never existed. Her legs were weak, her chest rising and falling in short, shallow breaths, and her clothes were coated in dirt. The train swayed beneath her like it was moving faster now, the rhythm louder and more aggressive than before. The emergency lights above her blinked erratically, casting long, twisted shadows on the walls. Every sound echoed louder than it should, the squeal of the wheels, the creaking of the metal, her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Something had shifted. She felt it in the air, in her bones. The train was nearing something, a destination not marked on any map. As she moved forward through the corridor, the signs of abandonment that had littered the cars before were now replaced with signs of recent movement, a napkin still fluttering from a breath of air, a warm cup of tea untouched, a pen rolling slowly across a table like someone had just left. She passed through another car and saw the old man again, standing at the far end, just beyond the threshold of the next compartment. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He only stared at her. She hurried toward him, desperate for an answer, for some sense that she hadn't imagined everything inside that cursed car. But as she got closer, his form began to fade. Not in the way light disappears, but like memory, the way dreams slip away as you try to hold on to them. By the time she reached the spot where he had stood, he was gone. In his place was the notebook. Burned on the edges but still whole. A final message had been added. Your stop is next. Choose wisely. The train slowed. She hadn't heard any whistle, hadn't seen any signs, but it was unmistakable. The hum beneath her feet changed pitch. The air grew warmer. Outside the window, a faint glow appeared, not natural light, but something else. The color of old parchment or fading fire. A platform came into view. But it wasn't a station in any normal sense. It was made of stone, weathered and cracked, stretching into fog that concealed what lay beyond. No people. No signs. No direction. Just one crooked bench and an old lamppost that flickered like it was dying. The train hissed and came to a full stop. The doors slid open with a soft groan. The air that rushed in was still, heavy, not cold or warm, just empty. Evelyn stood frozen. Her instinct screamed at her not to move. This wasn't safety. It wasn't escape. It was something final. Something irreversible. She glanced down the length of the train, looking for another face, another voice, anything. But she was alone again. Truly alone. Her eyes moved back to the platform. There was something about it. Not evil. Not welcoming either. Just waiting. She stepped toward the open door but didn't cross the threshold. Instead, she looked down at the key still clutched in her hand. It had turned black, no longer rusted but scorched, like it had been pulled from a fire. She dropped it, and it landed with a hollow clang that echoed too long, too deep, like it had fallen into something far below the floor. Then she heard something behind her. Not a knock this time. A voice. Familiar. Gentle. It said her name. Evelyn. She turned and gasped. Her mother stood in the aisle, just as she remembered her as a child. Not aged. Not sick. Whole. Her dress fluttered even though there was no wind. Come, the figure whispered. We can go now. Evelyn's knees almost gave out. It wasn't possible. Her mother had died when she was 9. Cancer. She'd watched her slip away in a hospital bed, holding her hand, saying goodbye. But now she was here, smiling. Waiting. You're tired, the figure said. You've done enough. Evelyn took a step back. Her eyes burned with tears. She wanted it to be true. She wanted the warmth, the comfort. But deep inside, she knew this wasn't her mother. Not really. It was the train. It had learned her pain. It had learned her memories. And it was offering her the only thing that could tempt her, a version of peace. She shook her head. No, she said softly. You're not real. The figure tilted its head. Then stay, it whispered, beginning to fade. Stay and drive the train. It needs someone now. Someone who sees. The figure vanished completely, leaving her in silence again. The doors remained open. The fog on the platform stirred slightly, revealing a sign in cracked iron above the bench. The language wasn't one she knew, but she could somehow read it. It said, to be forgotten. She stepped back, away from the door, and it hissed shut. The train jolted, the lights flickered, and it began to move again. Faster than before. The windows outside showed only dark. No more trees. No more land. Just endless black, with flashes of blue and white like lightning deep in the void. She returned to the car where she had first woken up. The coat was still there. The tray still down. But now, on the seat across from hers, was a mirror. A tall, freestanding mirror that hadn't been there before. She approached it slowly. Her reflection looked back, tired, bruised, streaked with dirt, but alive. She reached out and touched the glass. And her reflection didn't move. It stared at her, then slowly smiled. The reflection placed its hand on the other side of the glass, not aligned with hers, but higher, like it was waving. Then it turned and walked away. Into the mirror. Vanished. Evelyn sat down in her original seat. The notebook was beside her again, closed now, its cover blank. Her phone buzzed. For the first time in hours, or was it days, it showed a screen. The time was 2:17 a.m. A single message notification glowed. No sender. Just the words, "Remember." She stared at it until the screen dimmed and shut off. No fear now. Just a strange, steady calm. The train moved on. No sign of a destination. No idea if she had won or lost. But she had chosen. And sometimes, that's the only power you have left.